You're listening to Finding Fortitude, a podcast that aims to help former athletes take good care of their minds and bodies through sustainable, evidence-based health habits. I'm your host, Dr. Tori Williams, a physical therapist, coach, and fellow former athlete who is ready to be part of the change in healthcare and who is on a mission to learn and share about all things health and well-being so that you can be equipped with the knowledge and tools to live your best life. As a reminder, nothing shared on this podcast should be considered medical advice. Let's get started. All right, hello and welcome back to Finding Fortitude. I am so pumped to introduce my guest today for the podcast. She is someone who I really trust and admire deeply, and who I consider a mentor, a coach, and a friend. We're going to get into her story, but she is someone who truly leads from the front in the fitness industry and whose message and story really hit home with me from the first time I interacted with her content online, like several years ago now. And if you follow me on Instagram and watch my stories, you have no doubt seen me share some of her reels because she is the real queen. And I'm just so happy to have her impart her wisdom on all of us today. So without further ado, welcome to the pod, Allison Tenney.
I love doing podcasts like this because I'm like, yeah, we're friends first though, like mentor. I'm like, oh, you're so sweet, but also we're friends. I feel like it's been years in the making of just us really building relationship online, offline. It's been awesome. So thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Can't wait for this conversation today. I'm just like giddy thinking about the listeners hearing this one because I know you're about to drop some bombs on us. So to start us off, do you mind telling the listeners, for anyone who doesn't know you, a little bit about yourself and your athletic background?
Yeah. So I always say my first love was soccer, background in athletics. I was a Division I athlete. I grew up playing competitive soccer and then ended up rolling that into a career in Division I college coaching. So I thought I was going to be a Division I women's soccer head coach. Like that was the end game. And it ended up kind of morphing into this hybrid role of being a strength and conditioning coach and an on-field coach, basically out of necessity. In the college world, at least when I was coming up through it, the strength and conditioning side was really siloed off from the actual coaching side of things. So you would just kind of hand your team over to the weight room coach. And to be quite honest, women's soccer wasn't a priority. And so when the head coach was like, hey, do you have any interest in doing this? I was like, sure, I'll figure it out. So I was able to learn the strength and conditioning side and also incorporate and integrate that with what we were doing on the field. So I was an on-field coach and was doing all of the strength and conditioning for the team. So it was really this holistic approach of like, what was the loading that was going on the field? How can we incorporate that with what we're doing in the weight room and layer on top of that their fitness? So we were using a lot of technology, heart rate monitors. We were doing heart rate variability. We were doing GPS monitoring. So it was a lot of technology that I learned along with the strength and conditioning side of things. So that's my background. And then fast forward through some life changes, I ended up having to leave college coaching, basically because of a family move, and took all of that stuff from college coaching into the online space. And I was like, what the hell did I get myself into? Is this going to translate? Who am I talking to? Like all the things that a business owner probably goes through, finding your voice, finding your feet it can be the wild, wild west online. So that's like the glossy, shiny, pretty version. The short version, there was a lot of existential crisis. There was a lot of identity shifts, and I call them identity shattering I had two girls when I was coaching college soccer. So, like, becoming a mom while trying to manage a career and a husband who also travels for his career, starting a business. There was all of these things that kind of happened along the way that has really shaped and molded who I am today and how I show up in the space.
Mm, yeah, and I love that. And it is very clear from following you for a while now and being friends with you for a while now that all of that comes through in your messaging. Like from the very, very beginning, it was like, this woman is real, right? It was not this like aspirational, like fit spro perfect person on the internet. It was like, this person knows what she's talking about, but she's also very real. And you bring that into kind of what we're going to be talking about today, which is like what we can learn both through coaching and business and all of that in life, but like what lessons fitness also teaches us. And I love that you bring that into your content and your messaging. Before we go there, though, could you dive a little bit deeper into why you decided to become a coach and particularly a coach for women?
I don't think it was really this conscious, like, I'm going to be a coach for women and show them that they can do these things too. That wasn't the like first thing that came to mind. I loved soccer. It was like kind of one of those things where it was like, this is probably a dangerous identity to hold on to. And when you get done with college athletics, it's kind of your identity. So when I got done with college athletics, I was actually going to go to law school. I didn't know what to do with my life. I was like, sure, I was an English major. And so I thought I'll go to law school. Well, I deferred for a year because I was like, it was really like, do I actually want to do this or am I doing this because it just sounds cool? So I deferred for a year and started volunteer coaching at my alma mater and was a volunteer coach and was like, this is awesome. I really like doing this. And so from there, I just kept, I got a graduate assistant position and then I got an assistant coach position. And it was with people who I really admired, who were great mentors to me, who helped me fall in love with the amazing impact that you can have as a coach. So it wasn't like, oh, I want to be a coach for women. It was like, I love sport and I love what sport has given me. And so, and I'm really like, not to like have a big hair thing, I'm really good coach. I was a really good player and I have a gift of being able to like take my playing experience and teach those things. Sometimes you can be a really great player and then like a really terrible coach. I was a good, solid player that could also communicate clearly, instill confidence in my players, and like hype them up in the best way. And I think that's why I have a successful business because I have this coaching experience to fall back on. Like I was teaching tactics of the game, not just a squat. So I was communicating with all types of athletes and then layer on top of that their body image stuff, their identity stuff of being a soccer player. How do you manage a team? Oh, and oh yeah, you have to perform and you have to be fit and you have to be strong and you have to be healthy. It's a lot of contexts to bounce between. And so I had all of that experience before entering an online fitness business.
Hmm.
I don't know if that like indirectly kind of answers your question. It was like I fell in love with sport and as a female athlete was like, yeah, women need more opportunities. We need more attention and people who are going to give more intention to what this plan looks like. It was like, oh, sure, we'll just hand them off to the strength coach. Well, he's going to treat you like either like the football team
Mm-hmm.
or not give you the time of day. I wanted better for our athletes. So I think that's where like the drive really came from is I saw the discrepancies in college athletics And honestly, if you open your eyes and you start digging into like white supremacy, racism, misogyny, sexism, it is everywhere. You just have to see the systems for what they are and then move accordingly to be the change. And so I've taken that attitude from college athletics, from coaching women who are incredible. Like women soccer players, I'm like, they're fucking incredible. Um, and now I get to work with incredible women inside of my business.
Mm, yeah. Yeah, I mean, you touched on one of the things that is one of my biggest pet peeves as someone who also works with a lot of former athletes, former female athletes, is the lack of resources from a college level, but even before that.
Mm-hmm.
And how that actually also leads to higher risks of injuries in certain cases because we
Mm-hmm.
just haven't been trained the same way as our male counterparts in sport. And it's very frustrating, but I love that you are really filling a huge need in this space. And I know it's getting better. Like I know we're headed the right direction in this space, but I just really find you to be one of the leaders in that realm. So thank you. Um,
Thanks.
so I know that we could probably spend an entire episode on this, but what are some things that maybe irk you the most about the fitness space?
Where do I even begin? To me, I go immediately to this place of like the if then, this or that, either or. And so much of that like binary way of thinking is rooted in systems of oppression. And so to me, it's like, okay, yeah, systems of oppression irk me. Well, they really piss me off, quite
Mhm.
frankly. And I think instead of this like very surface level, like, don't tell women to lift heavy because they'll get bulky. Yeah, that irks me, but it's rooted in misogyny, patriarchy, sexism.
Mm,
Right. So, like, all of these surface level, like, hot topic things, if you actually do the work to dig a bit deeper, you see what they're rooted in. And so instead of firing back of this, like, no, women can get bulky if they want, or lifting won't make you bulky, like, right, it becomes this like pissing match for people over these, again, like, oh yeah, that is like a flash in the pan, I'm trying to get a reaction, I'm taking a side. Instead of that, I want to look deeper. I want to look at what is that connected to? What thread can I pull on to actually get at the root of why people believe that? What's wrong with being bulky or not being bulky? Oh, body image. People believe smaller bodies are better. Why is that? Oh, because of thin privilege. Oh, because diet culture tells us that a bigger body is somehow unhealthy. Like, you can really go down and discover these beliefs that you've been handed, right?
mhm,
That you may not, you'd be like, oh shit, like, no, I'm not sexist. I'm not race. Like, you can have this like knee jerk reaction, but if you haven't done the deeper work of pulling those threads, of looking at those things, then when you enter those comment section or you're posting those things online, you become part of the problem. And so and to me, there's a difference between pointing out the problem, right? Like I can say, oh, well, that's thin privilege, or that's diet culture, or that's racism, sexism, like, right, the systems of oppression. Like that's what that is. You can identify it. And how are you becoming part of the solution?
mm,
How are you creating a culture? How are you stitching a new fabric for people to be a part of?
mm,
So instead of like the firing back and forth, like I want my corner of the internet to be a like container of sorts of like, we can recognize those things. And here's a place that we can gather that you can have support and care and dignity and trust and truth and all of these things that we say are important. And you can be in a bigger body or a smaller body. You can want to get bulky or want to lose weight because we understand what those roots are connected to. So to me, this like what irks you, there's plenty of things that irk me on the surface level that I just want to like let them wash over me, right? Like, yeah, that's annoying. I see what the problem is and can we go deeper? So my invitation in my business for my clients, for my co-coaches, for anybody that's like in my ecosystem, right? The invitation is, can we go deeper? That's where the good stuff is. That's where like we talk about go for your morning walks and do the journaling and do the meditation and drink the water and do the workouts, like for what? For healing, for transformation, for happiness, for joy. But you have to do that hard work, that like underbelly, ew, ick. I don't want to look at that. I'm part of the problem. Hi, it's me. I'm the problem. It's me. You have to do that work too, because there's always two sides to that coin. And once you understand that there are two sides to that coin, then it's not like, oh, I'm a bad person. Oh, people are going to get mad. Like, yeah, you're human. Hi, welcome to being human. So long-winded answer there. There are plenty of things that irk me. I want to dismantle all of it and build better.
Yeah. And that is exactly why I wanted to have you on this podcast.
Now that is very complicated. I will say that it's like, yeah, you could pull some like really great sound bites from that. But let me tell you, however many years ago when I like started down this, like my business is a vehicle for those things. And I would like to say I'm like sneaky about it. I like to invite people into my space. And then if you're a close client or you're in one of my like smaller containers, you're signing my anti-racism statement. I have a company anti-racism statement. I am investing in my co-coaches to do healing collective trauma, anti-racism work. There are very specific actions that I take inside of my business to bring about change, and not in like oh, I'm going to change the world. Probably not. Like just me and my little like, and to the people that are in my containers, I want them to feel a certain way. And so that's why the work is important to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I always have felt called in when I'm around you. Right. And it's really, really, I don't even know if refreshing is the word, but it's unusual, unfortunately, to feel that way, especially in the health and fitness space, where you are called in to do better, from such a compassionate lens. And I love that about you. So,
But also like, in what way, shape, or form are humans ever going to change if it's not from that space? And like, ask me how I know, because I've been in spaces where doing that work, it was like, you deserve this, you are wrong, right? Like it puts you in this hierarchy of like, oh, I am feeling shame for being thin, for being white, for like identity pieces of mine that I was shamed for. Now, white supremacy does a fucking number on everybody. BIPOC, people of color, white people, like everybody. And I will say it affects everybody differently. And so the way white people have to do their work is different than BIPOC and Black people. I like, and I put myself out there for that. So I get a lot of shit because people will do anti-racism work differently. And I have found my lane is around being a white, thin, heterosexual female. Like, I have all of these intersections of identity that I own, that are mine, that make up me. I have to stop apologizing for those pieces. And again, I want to pull on those threads. What are the beliefs I've been giving? We're all swimming in that water. What are the beliefs that I've been given? And how does it relate to movement and bodies? Because you can't talk about bodies without talking about the context that we all have, which is different for every body, right? Me walking around in a thin white body as a thin white woman shows up very differently than a bigger Black woman. It's different. I can't speak to that experience, but I can try to empathize and understand and learn about those things so that when I show up, I'm not doing more harm, or when I do harm, I can clean that up. That's my commitment. It's so important in the fitness space to come from it in a compassionate way, to come from it from a caring way, because all bodies, white, big, Black, thin, queer, gay, like everybody, I believe, deserve dignity. Now, whether you think I'm going about it the right way or the wrong way, or this woman needs to do this and she should have done that, you are afforded that opinion. And this is the lane that I'm staying in. And this is what I believe to be the best possibility for bodies, for fitness, and how I choose to show up.
Yeah. Yeah. And anyone listening too that's in the healthcare space, like this is huge for healthcare providers as well. And that's something that it was so, I don't even want to say glossed over. I don't even think we touched on systems of oppression in PT school. And that has been such an eye-opening thing for me in my learning and my journey as a physical therapist, is recognizing the lived experience of other people and how that impacts their health, and how that impacts how they receive care, how that impacts how they, quote unquote, are compliant with the things that you are suggesting. I mean, it goes so, so, so deep. And it's something that I'm glad that you brought up today, because I think everybody needs to hear it, because this is not just a fitness thing, obviously, right? Like,
if you're dealing with bodies, this affects you. If you are a human walking around, like, this affects you. And here's what I'll like piggyback on saying is, it's one thing to do a deep dive and to understand systems of oppression and to understand your own like intersections of identity and how that like kind of all plays into it. To me, the next level is also doing your own work around your whiteness, around your own belief system of creating something new. So for example, how do you show up in your body? Like, I'm thinking of like somatic practices, and I don't know if you've done a lot of talk or a lot of work around somatics. Somatics is just like body practices, right? So like breathing and strength training, like somatics is just practices around the body. So I see strength training as a somatic practice. How can you come home to yourself? Because again, and this is like the messaging that I like to put out on my page and on my website and in my like, this is like my business, but like behind the scenes, this is actually what I'm thinking. Strength training as a somatic practice helps us come home to ourselves. And we have been so cut off that we get, we do all the education, we do all the workshops, we listen to all the podcasts, we do all this. So you can listen to our conversation and be like, oh, yes, that's very intelligent. Allison and Tori, yes, I agree with that. And we've been cut off from our bodies, right? So we'll think about all of these things, we'll intellectualize all of these things, we understand them. See, I have all of the language and all of the knowledge. But if you haven't done the somatic work, whether that's like, again, I do like strength training, you can do meditation, you can do yoga, you can, whatever, body work. You have to do some body work to integrate these things. And it's the integration that takes so much time because you're literally working on changing your nervous system. Your nervous system as a body has been trained to show up in a certain way, and you've been trained to react to other bodies in certain ways. So when I enter a room, I unconsciously, my nervous system could like put on, I don't know, like resting bitch face, like whatever. And you're like, she's such a bitch. And right, like it's just our nervous systems, our bodies interacting between one another. Okay. So now you layer in systems of oppression, all this fucked up shit, all this water that we're just swimming in. And if I have only done the work to be aware of it, to have the knowledge around it, but my nervous system is still like clutching my pearls in my purse and get right, like crossing the street, and those things are still problematic. You have to do the body work. And so I find it so interesting that in the fitness space, there's a disconnect there. They don't understand this bridge between healing work and the body with like creating a new context for what we're trying to create for like liberation, liberatory approaches. That has to happen on an individual basis. Yes, you have to have the knowledge, but you also have to do the deep dive of your own body work and your own healing as a white person. I'm speaking from my experience as a thin, white, privileged woman, right? Like, so me as a white person, how does my white body show up in spaces? Literally, like, those are the things that I'm thinking about when I'm posting stuff online. And of course, it's like, I'm bringing my coaching experience, my physiology, like I know how to program the fuck out of a 3-month training block of power. And then we're going to go into hypertrophy. And then we're going to go into, right? Like I can do all of those things. I like those things, but then we have to be asking the questions for what? Cool. You want to perform it, like performance and endurance and like all of those things are really, really cool and important. And to me, it has to come back to the individual of like, what are your goals? What are the things that are important to you? And most of the time, I think it's really like us wanting to be seen as humans. And so I really want to see people, make them feel like they're heard, that they're cared for, that they're loved all the time. Who doesn't want that?
Oh my gosh. Yes. And that is like such a wonderful example of the layers that are underneath a business like yours. That is how you, again, from the going back to what I said earlier, from the first time I interacted with your content, I was like, oh, there's more here. Like this is more than just about fitness. And that's why I've been drawn to you and why you're on this podcast today. And you've given me a lot of things to think about after today as well. We've already really kind of gone there, and I appreciate you for going there. But the next question I was going to ask was, which life lessons from fitness stick out to you the most, or what can we learn from fitness? And I think you've already gone into a lot of that, but is there anything else that comes to mind that maybe we haven't talked about yet?
So I'll offer you two things that I like to think about and I like to pull on this thread. Number one is, how are we building capacity? So fitness people really understand like endurance and cardio and building capacity. And you have to have like really great VO2 max and go for zone 2 cardio, right? To like have a big aerobic engine, which helps with recovery, which helps with like bigger lifts. We understand building capacity in the physical sense. I think those things directly translate into building emotional capacity. And we have to have emotional capacity to be able to be uncomfortable. And again, like the metaphors are everywhere for fitness. This is why I love it so much. Fitness people understand discomfort. Lifting does not tickle. It's going to be uncomfortable. Your work around healing, around transformation, around anti-racism, around all of its ugly stepchildren of diet culture and thin privilege, like all of these things that affect you and your clients inside of the fitness business, or, whatever you're dealing with. Those things you have to have a certain capacity to be uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
We have to build capacity to stay in the discomfort. It's like immediately, like somebody says like, oh, you hurt my feelings by saying this thing. Oh, well, it was just a joke. Oh, well, I didn't mean it. Instead of, oh shit, like what is my body's reaction? Can I pause? What is the interaction that's going on here, right? Like to stay in the discomfort and to be able to hold it, not for a moment, not for a day, but like to stay in it and to understand like, oh, okay, maybe I need to step back from this for a bit. Because believe me, I've been there where it's like, this is too much. I'm in the fire. I can't stay in the fire. This is unhealthy for me to be here for this long and to be taking this type of feedback.
Yep.
So that's what else. Number one is building capacity, and like that metaphor of being uncomfortable and learning your own levels, because it will change, right? Like you might start with a small capacity for doing this work. You might just have to listen to the podcast and be like, do I agree with that? I don't know. Am I the problem? But I'm such a good person. If that's your reaction, great. Welcome to the shit show. Pull up a seat. You're going to be here for a while.
Welcome in.
Welcome in. Welcome, friend.
Grab some popcorn. Grab a warm drink or something.
Yes. Yes. So I'll offer you that. And then another thing that a mentor once said to me, and again, I love this for like all of the fitness metaphors. It's about a remembering and also a remembering of the body. Like the body in and of itself is a context. We walk through the world in the body that we have, and people are constantly assessing, evaluating, judging. And people are like, oh, I don't judge. You do. If a man walks up to you in a street at 11 o'clock at night, you're making a different judgment than if a woman walks up. Like bodies are a context. And once you understand that, there's a remembering of like this body as home, this body as safe, maybe not. What is the context of your body? And then the fitness industry does a really good job of dismembering bodies, right? Like shoulder pump and glutes and biceps and six-pack ab. Like we do a great job of dismembering bodies.
Yep.
Into all of its little pieces.
PTs too,
right? All of us. If you work with bodies, we do a great job dismembering them. Forgetting that the body as a whole is a context. How are we remembering and remembering, right? Like the members of the body. And I just really love that, because when I get down my like, woe is me and God, I suck at this. And how come I can't get my shit together? And what, right? Like, just like everybody else, it's like, whoa, Allison, what does this body need? How am I remembering and also remembering?
Mm.
What is it like to be whole? What do I need to be whole? And I don't have like good answers for that, but I sure as hell have a lot of inquiries and a lot of questions, and am a part of communities that ask these questions,
Mm.
where I have support, where I am resourced and have resources. And I think that is a big part of it as well. That people remember that they have resources within and resources outside of themselves, right? Like there's the inner resources and the outer resources.
Yes. Yeah. Oh my gosh. And use the outer resources. I don't know what it is about athletes that we think that we need to know everything and know what to do and figure it. We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
I know how to use my body. I'm going to figure it out. We don't like asking for help.
Mm-mm.
And by far, like there is no way in hell I would be anywhere near where I am right now in my business or in my fitness or in my life
Mm-hmm.
without resources outside myself and without leaning
Mm-hmm.
in on other people. And I think, I don't know, there's probably lots of complexities and layers to that too, but I find that we have a hard time asking for help. And I think that's probably not just athletes. I think that's across the board sometimes. But for some reason, I see that as a trend among athletes. I don't know if you see that too.
I think as I've gotten older, I think it's like a trend that I've seen in more general sense. For me, I like to make the distinction like asking for help means I'm a burden. I see that a lot, particularly for women. So I don't want to ask for help because what if they get mad at me or what if they don't want to help me? Like we make up all these things that like I'm a burden, so I can't ask for help or I should be able to figure these things out. This whole like everything is figure outable. Yes, and you don't have to do it alone. Like
Mm-hmm.
we have all these quick, like, flash and pan little memes and stuff like that. Like, yes, you are smart, intelligent. You can figure it all out. You can't like, but not by yourself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right. Um, yeah. Now I forget where I was actually going with that. Hmm, it's gone.
It's okay. If it comes back, tell me.
I will.
Um, but I was going to add to that. I think that the information age that we're in, where literally you can Google anything and
Mm-hmm.
everything,
Mm-hmm.
and it will come up and you can find answers, right? You can find information. And I actually think you talked about this back when in your podcast.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember the episode, but you were talking about how like we have all the information in the world,
Mm-hmm.
but if we don't take the time to integrate,
Mm-hmm.
and that's another life lesson I think with fitness is it's like we have to rest,
Mm-hmm.
right? We can't always be working, taking in more information. There has to be a point at which we implement and which we rest. And oftentimes the implementation piece, like sure, there are sometimes you can do that on your own, but oftentimes that's where the help really comes in and that's where the resources really come in.
Yeah, there seems to be that side of the equation that we really focus on, the push, the grind, the hard work. Yes. And don't forget the flip side of that is the adaptation that happens during recovery. Insert all the life metaphors that you want. And I'm like, I should really be saying this stuff in the mirror to me because and maybe this was like my second thought that like floated away from me earlier. Athletes have, and I'm just like, I'll just speak for myself. I have the tendency to sprint hard, whether that's like on a goal, on a work project, on a cleaning my house. Like I just flip the switch and will go. And then society just tells us that that is the only way to get anything done. right? That like success looks like grinding yourself. Success looks like putting in just ridiculous hour. And like, again, it's like, yes, yes. And what about the pause, the healing, the recovery? I don't want my business to burn me out. Imagine that, right? Like, imagine that. Now, maybe I could like again implement more things that it wouldn't, but like it's not why do we harp on all of the hard work for what? For burnout, for overtraining, for all of these things, because that is like what's sexy and what like motivates people and what sells. And anytime that like there's something that's selling or money is involved, that's what you get. And so you have to actively engage in the process of like deconstructing some of those beliefs of like, who's profiting from this? Who wins from me feeling this way? Who wins from me buying this thing? And if you start asking better questions, you'd be like, oh, I feel like shit because I'm not working as hard as she is. I don't have the body that she has. I don't have the followers. I don't have the business. I don't have, right? It's this like never enough thing. And the problem with never enough is that it will never be enough if you are on that hamster wheel. So you have to get off that hamster wheel. I beg of you, get off the hamster wheel. I think we like before you hit record, you're like, I'm using that
Mm-hmm.
mantra. And it's a Buddhist mantra that I gave during like a content thing of like, God, I hope this lands. I don't know if this is going to land because we're talking about social media and content, but I literally want to come from this space of I am enough, I have enough, I do enough.
Mm.
I am enough, I have enough, I do enough. And then you can cheer on the person that's crushing in their business. And you can be like, fuck yeah, get that booty. Like, it's not for me. But now I'm not so attached because it's this like competition and piece of the pie. And well, if she wins, then I can't, like, because I have enough, I do enough, I am enough. That's like the thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I have been using that a lot lately. And I think that that will continue to be used a lot lately. And so I'm so glad that you shared that with us on that webinar about again about social media content, something very different, but
Social media.
it has stuck with me. So yeah, thank you. Uh I think that's a really nice place to stop, actually. So before we go, I always like to ask people, like, is there anything else, that's been on your mind or that you've been thinking about lately, or anything that you like really just want to make sure that you tell the audience?
We've covered so much today. I think it's really reach out to people like Tori. Reach out if you like resonate like to me. Like you are not alone. You don't have to do things alone. There's support in all kinds of different ways.
Hmm. Yeah. And with that, I want to give you a chance to plug your services because I
Mm,
know from personal experience that they are awesome.
they
And
are.
I am in your DIY den right now and
Yes.
seeing the gains every month and from all perspectives. And I'm not just talking about muscle. Can you talk a little bit about your programs?
Yeah. So I have two signature programs. My first one is the Den. And I say it is more foundational, not beginner, than my other signature program, Alpha, which is geared a bit more towards the athletes that I coach. And they're both 12. I mean, there's probably 3 years of progressive programming inside of the Den. Alpha, there's performance testing. And we start more with building an aerobic base. So those are my two signature programs. They both have DIY versions in case coaching is like not a priority for you. And then I will also be opening up my business coaching program, FitBiz Collective, in just a couple weeks here. We're going to start that in March 2024 for people listening, if you need date context, where I help online fitness business owners basically build their business from a foundational place. So we're not jumping right into social media. We're jumping into like legal and contracts and your finances and all of the things that Tori and I just talked about. How do you put those things in place in your business practice?
Mhm.
So you're not just thinking about them, you're implementing them. And then my last program is called the Wolf Pack, and that is my higher touch 6-month small group program where I take 10 women and we work on a lot of mindset stuff, a lot of behavior change things, and do deep dives into identity along with the individualized program that I do. So I really love people to start in the den and then move into alpha, or if you're like ready to fucking crush, alpha is for you. And if you're more on the business end of things, then FitBiz Collective.
Amazing. I love it. Yes, I've been in FitBiz Collective and I've been in the den and now the DIY den, and it is amazing. So I hope you all check that out. Okay, now if people want to connect with you or ask questions, where can they find you?
Living my best life on the gram. I am at Allison Tenney and I am super active on Instagram. Please come into the DMs and say hi. I would love to chat, especially about all the things that Tori and I have talked about.
Amazing. Okay, well, thank you so much, Allison, for being here. I'm gonna need some like 10 minutes to decompress from this conversation because we went there and I'm
Yes, we
so
did.
glad we did. So thank you again so much for your time and for being here. I appreciate you so much.
I appreciate you too.
All right. That has been another episode of Finding Fortitude. If you liked what you heard today, please go ahead and leave me a rating or review. It really helps my podcast be shown to more people. So please do that or share this episode with someone who you think might find it interesting. And I will see you again next time.